Okay, it's now 5 o'clock. Again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's primary debate. My name is Dr. Shaka Smith, and I will serve as your moderator this evening. First, I would like to thank the Anderson County Democratic Party for hosting tonight's event, as well as the Greenville County Democratic Party and the Oconee Women of Progress for assisting with the live streaming and video production. We also acknowledge and appreciate all elected officials, community leaders, volunteers, and attendees joining us tonight, both in person and online. Tonight's debate is an opportunity for voters to hear directly from the candidates about the issues impacting our communities, our state, and our future. Our goal is to create a respectful, informative, and fair conversation that allows voters to better understand each candidate's vision, priorities, and leadership approach. As moderator, I want to emphasize that this evening will remain nonpartisan, respectful, and focused on substance over conflict. We ask the audience to remain courteous throughout the event and allow each candidate uninterrupted time to answer questions. Each candidate will have equal opportunity to respond. Candidates will alternate who answers first. Responses should remain concise and focused on the question that was asked. Time limits will be enforced to ensure fairness. Closing statements will be limited to 3 minutes. At this time, we will begin with introductions of our candidates. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Eunice Lehmacher, and I want to be your congresswoman. When I'm out canvassing and calling voters, the 3 questions I get asked is, who am I, why am I running, and how can I win? So who am I? I'm a social worker. I work in psychotherapy. Before I started that career, I was a high school math and physics teacher, a librarian, and I worked as a director of Christian education in a church. For the last several decades, I've worked in mostly Oconee and Pickens County, plus a few of the other counties as a psychotherapist, a social worker. That's just my professional resume. I have also worked in the community, developing homeless programs, creating support groups. Why am I running? I have worked with so many people, from the homeless to the very rich, from vulnerable populations to people with mental illnesses to veterans. And I've heard so many stories over the years. I can't tell you all of them in 2 minutes, of course. But I heard enough stories where I realized the problem was not that we, the professionals or volunteers, weren't working hard, or my students or the patients were working hard. It's the government that's getting in the way. Most recently, cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and the ACA have hurt so many people and our local hospitals. So people are having to make the choice between, do I pay my medicine or do I send my kid on a field trip? I think that's not right. And I just got tired of there's individual work here, and I wanted systemic change. So that's why I chose to run for office. How can I win? I've been running for office. This is my 3rd time. I've helped several other candidates also. For example, Claiborne Linville, the only Democratic candidate, Democratic councilwoman in the most conservative county in the state, won, and I helped her. I have the experience, and I can beat cherry pigs in the fall.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay, I just want to be honest. I'm going to get my little seconds at the end there, too. I'm Dr. Ernest Mackins. I'm your candidate for U.S. House District 3. A little bit about my background. I am a retiring educator with over 28 and a half years of experience in the classroom. I am also a U.S. Army veteran. I am the current Senior Vice Commander of VFW Post 6089 in Anderson, South Carolina. And on top of all that, the reason that I know I'm the best candidate for this position is the fact that I have been working in the community since I was 12 years old. I'm a local pastor. I'm a local teacher, educator, I've always been in the community. And the most important thing that I'm very proud of, besides all that, is I've been married to my wife, Erica, for 25 years, and we have two grown sons, Adrian and Travis. Why am I running? Let me just get to the point. The reason that I'm running for this office is real simple. When I was a young boy, 11 years old, the Ku Klux Klan burned 3 crosses in my yard. And with the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, it looked like that we are headed right back that way. And I'm also running because I'm tired of all the chaos in Washington, D.C. It's time to put people before politics. It's time to put family before special interest groups. It's time out for all this making up a problem. You need somebody in that office who is going up there to fight for you. You need someone who is going to, like my students say, stand on business. We're going to stand on business for the people. And that's what this is all about. And so the last thing I want to say to you, I have been a servant leader all my life, and I would be honored to have your vote. And I want to say one last thing, and I know they don't like it because I'm not going to be quiet. Mac your voice. Say it with me. Mac your voice. Mac your voice. Mac your voice. Mac your voice and be heard. Mac your voice and be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Please welcome our candidates tonight. Thank you, candidates, for being here today and for your willingness to serve your community through public leadership. We will now begin the question portion of tonight's debate. These questions were thoughtfully developed with input from community members representing diverse perspectives and lived experiences across our community. I would like to personally acknowledge Taylor Noble, Gordon Smith, and Chris Todd for their valuable insight and contributions in helping shape these discussion questions. Our goal is to foster a fair, balanced, and meaningful conversation centered on the issues that matters most to the people we serve. You will have 3 minutes max to answer each question. Eunice won the coin toss, so we will begin with you. The first question is, what do you believe is the most pressing issue facing residents in the district right now?
Well, when I'm out talking to voters, they tell me high prices, whether they're independents, Republicans, or Democrats. And I agree. That's what we've got to change. It's pretty clear right now that the gas price is up because Trump's war of choice. And, of course, that we have a representative, Sherry Biggs, our incumbent, who's just saying whatever he said, right? I'm in this race for we, our needs, us, all of us, and our future. She seems to be in the race for him. Whatever I can make out of it, what money I can make. And when there's a problem, let's find somebody to blame it on. I have somebody to blame the high prices on, the people in Congress today. Let's kick them out. Let's have a new Congress. That's why I'm running. I have a number of ideas about that 3 minutes won't let me talk about. But as a healthcare provider, I can say one of the problems with prices is that we've cut healthcare. I know probably most of you don't take Medicaid, but if you have ever had a person in a nursing home or know somebody that works in a hospital or even know somebody whose restaurant is in or near a hospital or cleans a doctor's office, those people, that's a lot of the population, are being affected by the cuts to the ACA and Medicaid. We need to return that and expand health care access. That's only part of it. Energy costs. Utility bills are going up now once a year because our lovely South Carolina House and Senate passed a bill last year allowing that. I want to lower your electricity costs like they're doing all around the rest of the world except the United States. They are putting up renewables. Some places like Australia has so much energy, they're giving away 3 hours a day. Isn't that a problem you'd like to have? And wouldn't you rather have the parking lot covered in solar than a gas-fired power plant like they're planning to build in Anderson right now that is creating pollution? That's going to raise our health care costs. It's going to raise our electric bills. Right now, it costs more to build a gas-fired power plant than it does to cost solar, and it takes longer. So I have the ideas, that's only 2 of them, to reduce your prices, and that's my first priority.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because one of the things that we always talk about is not just in the communities when you go out and talk to people. When you go to work or you go to jobs, you always see the same thing, affordability. And affordability is not just, it's some of those things, but it's all of the things. It's groceries. It's not just health care. It's all the prices across the board. They have skyrocketed because we have a Congress that doesn't have a plan. And we have a Congress that refuses to stand up to Trump. That's what it's all about. So you ask me, what can I do? Everybody wants to expand health care through Medicaid and Medicare. That's good for 63 and 64 and 65, but what about the rest of us? It's time for us to have universal health care. Let me talk to you about it. That's one of my plans. My plan is to get to Congress as a junior congressman and work with the senior congressman so that we can work these plans through. Listen, of all the countries in the world that are industrialized countries, we have, on this western side, we have 41. 37 of them have already accomplished the task of universal health care. Why can't we do that for everyone? We are the United States of America, and every day you pay Medicaid and Medicare costs straight out of your check, and you pay over enough. If you don't believe me, go look at Germany, and Germany has universal health care. That's one of my plans. We got to do it, and the only way to do it is have you, the people, send a candidate to Washington, D.C. who is willing to fight for you. It's time out for shaking hands and being nice. It's time to say this is what we need for our people. I thought the rule was America first. And if it's America first, then it should be you first. And then secondly, my second plan is how are we going to lower these costs? Hey, it's real simple. You gotta reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That's where all the oil is getting tracked and backed up. And so because we cannot get it, the prices have skyrocketed. So you got to understand that oil is used for more than gas. It's used for a lot of different items. And so we got to open that. And then we got to do one last thing, and then I'm going to shut up. It's real simple. We've got to raise that minimum wage. We can't live off those $7.25 an hour. Who lives off that? I can't. We need at least $15 an hour. So with that being said, I thank you, and I would appreciate your vote if you sent me to Congress to fight for you.
Thank you so much. Our next question is, how would you build trust and communication with constituents who may not agree with your viewpoints?
Am I answering first each time? Usually we alternate.
Yeah, you're supposed to alternate.
Okay.
First of all, how can we build trust? And I love that term, trust. Trust requires someone to be trustworthy. You got to find someone on the other side of the aisle who is trustworthy. If we find people that are trustworthy on the other side of the aisle and they have the same agenda for the people that I do, I would be happy to work with them. But here's the thing. The problem is finding trustworthy people. How many times have the Democrats sat down with the Republicans and come up with a plan for them to go down, vote on the plan, and then say Trump has changed the plan? We can no longer afford to do that anymore. We need to find people, if they're not trustworthy, get people elected to that office who are trustworthy. Because believe it or not, I do respect the Republicans because they had one good Republican, in my opinion. His name was John McCain. That dude had honor, loyalty, and commitment, and our president trashed him. So it's time out for playing games and trying to find people. You say, who can we work with? I'm going to work with anybody that can work with me, but I'm not going to allow them to take advantage of me because I'm going to be up there for you, the people. That's the only way to move people forward. And you ask the question, we've got to get rid of all the untrustworthy people in Congress. It used to be a long time ago when you gave somebody your word, it stood for something, and now it stands for nothing.
It is a real concern that people don't trust their representatives and the people of the world don't trust America. And I do want to get back to that. Policies, I was in Germany visiting my family, and people said before Trump was elected, are they really going to elect him? And also, if you were to elect somebody, this was back when Biden was elected, why should we trust you? You might elect a crazy person again in the future. So I do think that the world doesn't trust us based on us changing our ideas. Now, I have to say I'm a little bit concerned with any politician who is not comfortable with compromise. You probably all know that the only way we've ever gotten anything done in the U.S. Congress, and we have a U.S. Congress that got the least done of any Congress in history, by the way, only about 90 bills. They should have had 300 done by now. They like to do name calling. But the only way we've ever gotten anything done, such as the Constitution, was compromise. So a politician that says, I'm not going to work with the other side, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with. I am going to get to know all the Congress people. Unfortunately, after I'm elected, I don't get to choose who I work with. I get to work with the people that also got sent there by their electorate. So it is my job to find out who's workable with, right? And we used to do that, right? We used to eat dinner together, our Congress people, babysit each other's children. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be encouraging them to eat the SNAP diet with me so they understand that you really can't live on the SNAP diet. I'll bring them lunch, the saltines and peanut butter that people live on at the end of the month, right? How are we going to build trust? We have to be trustworthy. If you want to know if I'm trustworthy, I can tell you as much as I want, but you want to meet somebody who already knows me. So perhaps if you've worked with me in the community or you know me from other work, professional work, maybe you could raise your hand right now if you've already worked with me. Those are the people here that can tell you if I'm trustworthy and if I do what I say I'm going to do. Talk to them. Look who raised their hands. I am a person who does what I say I'm going to do. As a psychotherapist, one of the things I do is talk to couples who are in conflict. Maybe one wants a divorce, the other doesn't. I have to work with those people. So I can talk to people that are kind of difficult. And I know how to listen first. We got 2 ears and 1 mouth. And after I've listened, maybe they'll listen to me. So I'm here for you to mostly listen and also represent you.
Thank you. This question is for Eunice next. What strategies would you support to strengthen local economic development and create sustainable jobs?
Lots of them. Again, 3 minutes won't work. Do you know what the fastest growing job sector is right now in our state? Healthcare. Somebody said it. Whoever said it.
I did.
Ding. Correct. So want to help healthcare. I certainly agree with Dr. Mackins that we need universal health care. Do you know why universal health care didn't pass in the United States in the 50s through the 80s when it did in all those other developed countries? There's a lot of reasons, like rich pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies, but they had those in other countries too. I'll tell you, racism, right? We have been represented for decades by white men. Now, I do love white men. I'm married to one, and I have 2 adult sons, and they're wonderful. And there's a lot of wonderful white men in here, so don't take offense at this. But the people representing us in Congress are the kind of white men that said back then in the 50s through the 70s, if we give universal health care, black people will get it. I don't want that. I'm going to vote against it. Now, there's many other reasons, right? We do have people like that in Congress now. Who do not want universal health care, right? So a candidate has to know that Biden and Obama and Clinton tried to pass universal health care when they had Democratic majorities and they didn't pass it, and why it didn't pass, and they have to work with that, right? So I want to work on health care. I don't have enough time to talk about the other things, but to stimulate the economy, I'd like to welcome immigrants back. They make jobs and make businesses. They're small business creators, and I think we should welcome them. I would like to put SNAP back in place. Every dollar we spend on SNAP comes back to us as $1.70 in economic growth. If you're poor and have no food, and you give somebody money for food, you know what they do? They go out and spend it in the grocery store. And that helps the grocery store, right? So all the things that our administration now and Terry Biggs supported said is saving us money, it actually cost us money. Look at what's happening with Ebola right now, right? We cut all that care over there, and now that's spreading, and who knows if it's going to come here and cost us money, right? So let's put back in place a government that works for Americans, not for the oligarchs, rich and famous.
I love that. Key word is work. See, you got to find somebody in the aisle that's going to work with you. You can talk all day, you can talk all these big games, but ain't nothing going to happen until you find people that will work with you. So let's talk about it. What you really want to do is when you get to Congress, you do want to form relationships. You do want to collaborate with people, but you want to collaborate with people that can keep their words. And the first thing we really need to do, yes, Biden and yes, Obama was unable to pass it, but just because they couldn't don't mean we can't. I think people in the economy, I think not just people, but people all over this state is getting tired of people saying, you can't. What about what we can to do? I believe together that we as a people can finally pass universal health care. I can't do it by myself. I need a majority of the House, and we need at least 57 senators. We can always convince 3. Have you ever noticed that? We always convince 3, just like we did when they tried to redistrict the state. We convinced 3 to 4. You're never going to convince all of them because they are people who are voting for party rather than voting for people. If you send me up there as your representative, I'm going to vote for the people, not the party. And I'm going to tell you this straight up. It's time to put family before politics. It's time to put family before special interests. And so I will be working on universal health care. And we always talk about the Green New Deal and how we're going to get it. But look, even with the Green New Deal, it passed, and what did the president do? Send out an executive order to cancel it. We need to put out a law that says that when we work on clean energy like solar and we work on wind power, that these cannot be revoked by a simple veto or an executive order from the president. And I believe the people can do that. Now, we can't do that by ourselves. Those are just 2 of my ideas. That's just the beginning. There's many more things that we can do, but we can only do it together. All of us are talking this game about what we will do, but you can't do unless you have people working with you. And down in Columbia, we're proving when we stop the redistricting, it's going to be a lot of communication, a lot of collision, what we call collusion, and working with people to try to fix things. We can't do it by ourselves. So what I'm asking you to do is send the candidate up there, send me up there that's willing to fight for this. There's no can't in me. We'll find a way to get it done. And then when I'm going to say it again, make your voice and be heard.
The next questions, starting with Ernest. Workforce shortages are impacting many sectors, including healthcare, education, and public service. What solutions do you propose?
I'm glad you asked that question because that question's been on my mind. Workforce shortages. We first got to ask ourselves, who's getting impacted by most of these workforce shortages? Let me just go ahead and tell you, Black and minority people. The unemployment rate right now among white Americans is around 4%. Around Black people, especially Black male and women, it's 17%. Go look up the numbers. Now, how can we fix it? The first thing we got to do is stop our current president from putting tariffs on everything, because what that's doing is charging the local and small business. I'm a small business owner. I can no longer afford to buy any products without paying a high tariff. And when we pay that tariff, he's telling us we're not getting taxed, but we're getting taxed. But guess what small businesses do with the tariff when they tax? They pass it on to the consumers, and the consumers can no longer afford that. So we got to first get rid of all of that. And that's going to be a long time because this man had put tariffs on everything. If he don't like you, he'll put a tariff on you. If you look purple, he'll put a tariff on you. He just put tariffs on everything. That's what he does. Now, that's one way to start to stimulate the economy, but that's not the only way. The second thing you got to do, and I know people hate hearing this, we've got to cut back on military spending. I'm a U.S. veteran. When has it taken $1.7 trillion to go ahead and pay a military who lost some billions of dollars over there that nobody can find? Nobody knows what happened to that money. And so we got to do that, and then we got to reduce the deficit. And when we reduce the deficit, what that would do is create what we call GDP growth, gross domestic product. Once we get that back to 3 and 4%, it will then automatically kick in and the economy will start to produce those jobs that we are missing right now because of our current leadership. And I'm telling you right now, if you send me up there, I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to make sure you get your jobs back. And I'm especially bring back DEI, because there's nothing about listen, we got to be diversified. Diversified is diversity, equity, inclusion. Say it with me, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. We got to include all people. This is a multinational, multiracial nation. This is not a one-way nation. It's not white. It's not Black. It's all of us together. That's what the founders intended. Thank you.
Workforce shortages are impacting many sectors, including healthcare, education, and public service. What solutions do you propose?
Can you hear me?
No, we can't
Sometimes a whisper gets further than yelling. Sometimes you get further with a whisper than when you yell. What can we do? What can we do for the workforce shortages? We can certainly work with our teachers. Our teachers are leaving for other states because the salaries are higher in North Carolina, Georgia, et cetera. That's a state house issue, but I think the federal government can work on that, raising teacher salaries. I think we've got to invest way more in technical colleges. I'd favor free education for the first 2 years for everybody, another thing other countries do, right? I would also favor raising the minimum wage. 15 is not enough, certainly 7, and some people are making 2, waitresses. We've got to incentivize small business. What did the Trump administration do? They cut the Small Business Administration. Makes no sense. We got to put money into health care. I'm certainly for universal health care. I want to start with increasing Medicare, for example. Let's lower the age to 64, my first year there, the next year 63, and so on. That will, of course, save us money in the long term, and it will give more people access, and it will I'm a healthcare provider, and part of my income comes from Medicare and Medicaid. That puts money in my pocket, right? All those healthcare people. The workforce shortages are related to the businesses and the education system not working together. We unfortunately live in a world where oligarchs and rich people and billionaires and billionaire companies make decisions. For example, in South Carolina, they want to put in data centers, and that's going to raise your electric bill. Now, who's going to benefit from the data center and the gas-fired power plants? Meta wants to build one in Louisiana that is the size of Manhattan, and they want 10 gas-fired power plants. Who's benefiting from that being built? The people of Louisiana? And you are paying higher electric rates for that, right? So I want to put curbs on industry data centers. Let's have less of them. Let's put curbs. Our current administration doesn't believe in putting curbs on AI. Every bill that comes up, he says, no, let's let them do what they want. And who's benefiting? The rich people get richer. So let's tax the rich. Let's help the little people. That's 99% of the population. And that's going to help with the workforce as well. If you have more money, you can switch jobs. You can go back to college, etc.
Okay, thank you so much. This next question starts with Eunice. It's about healthcare and mental health. Access to healthcare and mental health services continues to be a concern in many communities. What policies or initiatives would you prioritize to improve access?
I'm going to start by talking about the state. I'm on the Anderson-Oconee-Pickens Mental Health Board. They cut funding to mental health in your state rather dramatically in the budget right now. So please vote for those state house and Senate people so they'll fund. For example, they cut funding to 988. That's the number you call if you have a mental health emergency. It's federally mandated, and South Carolina said, well, we're not going to pay for it, right? Makes no sense. So one of the things I do is work with candidates running for State House and Senate to help them get elected so we can work together. But on a federal level, I've already said about the things I've said about Medicare helps with mental health as well. Do you know how many mental health providers are in Congress, the U.S. Congress? 1. Her name is Sherry Biggs. She has cut funding for mental health. I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm a storyteller. I haven't had time to do that much today, but I'm going to tell stories about the people I know who lost something because they didn't have health care coverage. I remember working with a young man once. He was a teenager, and his mother walked in, kind of like this. And I said, sit down, are you okay? And she said, well, I'm not sick enough yet. I have a kidney problem, and when it's bad enough, I can go to the emergency room, right? I was giving mental health to her son, and she was that sick. Well, that's no way to solve a problem. That's why I'm running for office, because we are not taken care of. By spending money on mental health, we make it easier for people to do their job, to take care of their children. Do you think she could help her son very much while she had this pain in her kidney? So we need to increase funding by expanding Medicare. I also am for the Medikids that Annie Andrews talks about. That's universal health care for 0 to 18. I think we can do that. We do that with numbers, right? We say, well, if we had every kid that had leukemia get caught sooner, then it would cost less. If they caught their diabetes sooner, they wouldn't be as sick. It would cost less. All the kids would get their vaccines and their well-child checkups. You'd find autism sooner. You could treat it, right? So we have to prove to the Congress people that offering Medikids 0 to 18 for everyone, besides that it saves us money, it allows parents to work in gigs. It allows parents to take off because they don't have to stay in their job because they won't have health care for their sick child. So it would help all of us. And that works for mental health too, not just for physical health.
You know, all my life, being a local pastor, I've always been told you need to be quiet, sit in the corner. They want the black people to go back, sit in the corner and be quiet. But I want you to understand something. You can whisper and not even be heard. But when I go up there, I'm going to be heard. That's what it's all about. The second thing I want you to understand, I want you to hear this. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, not the one that sits in the corner and be quiet. Now let's talk a little bit about mental health. If anybody understands mental health, yes, I believe Eunice worked in the field, but I lived in the field. I am a U.S. Army veteran, and we come home with PTSD and all these other ailments that deal with mental health issues. And so, yes, I really do want to increase mental health, what we call more money needs to be put into mental health. But I think there's something else needs to be done. Y'all remember back in the 1980s when we had mental health institutions everywhere and they closed them down? We need to reopen all of those institutions. That's how we're going to fix this problem of mental health. That's one thing that you need to do. The second thing we need to do is work with our United States veterans. And I'm telling you this because I'm a U.S. veteran. And when I came home, I had PTSD. So I know what it's like. We need to sit down not just with our U.S. veterans, but our teachers who are going through the same types of things in the classroom. All of this stuff, these are the things that we should be doing in Congress instead of creating problems and then pretending to solve them. And then not only just talking about expanding mental health underneath Medicaid and Medicare, if we had universal health care, it would take care of that problem for all the people, not just 0 through 18, but all the people in our country. And the only way to do it is to get the funding. Let me just tell you something. If we can bomb a country and spend $50 billion, can we not put money back into health care where it belongs? That's the problem. And so this is my intention. If you send me to Congress and you give me your vote, see, the most important thing for me right now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to have a lot of money, but your vote matters. This is a grassroots movement. If I have your vote, I will get to Congress and I will make that change. I'm not a millionaire, will probably never be a millionaire, but my goal is to make sure we take care of the small people, which includes me, because I don't make no $100,000 a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is along the same lines. Substance use and overdose rates continue to impact families across our state. What role should government and community organizations play in addressing this issue?
Well, first of all, I believe that government should provide grants. The local community, in conjunction with the local churches, can help work with these students to help reduce substance abuse. You say, but how can you do that, Pastor Mackins? Let me tell you how. Every church is usually closed during the week. You can have programs at those churches to work with the individuals in the community, and you can talk to the local pastors in the association and bring in people to train people about substance abuse. And then you can, one thing that's really bothered me, that really got on my nerves, is the fact that we've ignored the whole community over here, which is the Hispanic community. We need to get people into the Hispanic community and talk about substance abuse and what we need to do to reduce it. But the federal government can give you the money, but the local agencies are the ones that's going to be responsible for implementing it. Because your first line of defense is your local government. It is your state house candidate. It is your senators that's right here in the state. So you have to get those people involved and let them know that this is the direction that we're moving, And you got to form what we call, you got to work with those people. You got to collaborate with them. You got to communicate with them. And you got to get the information out to the community. I was talking about, and I'm going to be quiet, I think I got 30-something seconds left. And it's real simple as this. If you don't get the information out, nobody's going to know. It's just like with this debate right here. I had to talk to everybody and their mama just trying to make sure some people would show up. So if we don't get the information out, it's going to have to be placed on TV. It's going to be put on ads. It's going to have to be communicated in Spanish. I say this to my kids, and I make it real simple. We have this one statement. Listen to it. Las nadas de las nada es nada. It means nothing from nothing is nothing. Amen.
I appreciate all these mental health questions. We have an organization called SAMHSA, I won't give you the acronym, that has provided a lot of grants. Fortunately, 988 will survive when the state cuts it because there's a SAMHSA grant that will keep funding it. It runs out in September, so call your senators and House members. But those grants have come in. We've also gotten a lot of grant money from the opioid settlements, right? The drug companies. And those have funded a lot more substance abuse treatment. What I hear from my patients and family members who are dealing with substance abuse is that the treatments are too short. We're treating people 5 days for a heroin addiction inpatient. I don't have to tell you that's not enough. And they come home and they go back to the same situation. So I would favor that governments have some power over insurance companies. Why is it 5 days? Because that's what the insurance says they will pay. Again, the people making money are making health care decisions, not the experts like myself that know how to treat things. Same's true with schools, by the way. But so I also think that to deal with all substance abuse issues, we've got to work on the community. Many people fall into, and it's not just substance abuse that's addiction. Right now we've got sports gambling, pornography, addiction to YouTube and all of that, right? There's so many addictions. Why do people fall into things like substance use? Because they don't have a thriving community. That's especially true in our vulnerable inner city communities, as Ernest said, in the Black communities, but also in other poor communities in the inner city. So I favor putting money into gymnasiums. Every Black community I talk to says, can we have more basketball courts outside? That's way cheaper than a substance abuse program, right? So we ask the community, what would help your young people, and we figure out a way to get that money. Now, the basketball court is, of course, the city that's doing that. But again, federal grants can help. The research says that a great deal of substance abuse is because people don't have a family, a church. As you know, most people don't go to church anymore, a community that supports them. And so we need to put funding into prevention, not just drugs are bad. You know, I grew up with DARE, and how good did that work? The research says it didn't work good at all, right? So we need to use the research-based things. I'm reading those all the time as part of my profession, and I'm going to take those to Congress and say, the research says this works in Iowa, let's do it in the whole U.S., right?
Thank you so much. Eunice, what are your priorities regarding public education and youth development?
So I'm a former high school math and physics teacher. I was a youth librarian, and I worked as the director of Christian education, that's youth pastor, in my earlier life. And of course, I've counseled teens. So I've got a lot of experience in that. Priorities for education. Teachers and schools need money, not just for teacher salaries, and not just for the rich schools, right, in the rich communities. We need to work so the funding for education comes from counties and states and your property taxes, but the federal government could come in and say, you know, the corridor of shame here. They get less money. My husband is a professor at Clemson in physics, and they can see in their classes that people that come from that area are simply not prepared to do the math, to be in his physics class, and the people in the richer areas are. So I think the federal government could get in and do some equity there with education. So I'd like to work on that. Youth development, I talked about a little bit in my last answer. I don't want to blame all of opioids on the youth. But if we did things for the youth, apprenticeships, clubs, Simple things like basketball courts. I want to, for each issue, also for youth, I want to have a group of youth that are telling me what do youth need. What they tell me right now with the youth advising my campaign is that they need help with college costs and the loans they get, right? So as I said, free college education, more Pell Grants. The administration is cutting Pell Grants right now. Let's do more than that. Let's give loan forgiveness to teachers, especially those that teach in the poor areas. So what are most teachers, and this was true of me, I made $12,500 when I was a high school teacher. That was back in the 80s. A year, I'm talking about. Most teachers tell me they're not in it for the money. They know I was a math teacher. I could have gone anywhere else and made more money, but I loved teaching, right? That's why I stayed in it. So the people that love the job, let's give them the money, not just for their salaries, but for the teacher supplies. They're spending that on their own pocketbook. And you parents are having to take in Kleenex. The school should pay for that. So let's get the government funding to do some of those things, to bring it to every school system.
If I were to go to Washington, D.C., the first thing I'm going to do is get Congress. We're going to have to work a long time to get them to rebuild the Department of Education, because the Department of Education controls a lot more than you think. It's not just the loans. It's also when people are discriminated against within the school system. So I'm going to get them to rebuild that first. We're going to start there. And then the second thing we're going to do, we are going to look at teacher salaries. They keep talking about they're not in it for the income, but let me tell you something. When you're starving and you can't make ends meet, you are in it for the income, because then you got 2 or 3 other jobs and there's nothing else to do. So we're going to work on getting teachers better pay. But beyond that, I feel like here's what's really icking me about the public school system, living in it and being in it for over 28 years before I retired. I was a science teacher for 6 years. I was an administrator for 9 years. And then I was also the co-chair of the CAPE department in Greenville, just recently retired on May 26th. So let me tell you something. What you're going to have to do is stop allowing these local government and legislators to take money out of education and put it in these vouchers. I believe public funds belongs in public schools. I was educated in a public school, and that's what it's all about. And I'm going to say one other thing to you, and then I'm going to get out of the way. You're going to have to do those 2 things first, but beyond that, you're really going to have to reform the whole education system. It doesn't work the way it used to. It used to be just designed for a certain amount of time. I believe in, like I do agree with Eunice on this part, we do need internships. We do need to pay for, to me, I'm not going to pay for the first 2 years of college. We need to pay for all 4 years of college, at least the first 4 years of college. And then the kids, if their students want to go further, then they can. And then the second thing we need to do is put the money back in the budget that they keep taking out. Stop paying the school administrators so much and pay the teachers what they deserve. And then I believe education will change.
Thank you so much. Continuing along the same lines of education and youth, many young people feel disconnected from politics and civic life. What do you believe are the biggest barriers to youth civic engagement, and what would you do to address them if elected?
First of all, and I hate to say this is where I will have government overreach. We need to put civics back into the high schools and the middle schools so that the students and the people will learn how government really works. There's 3 branches of government. There's the legislative, there's the judicial, and then there's the lawmaking body, which is Congress. And so what they need to understand is how Congress works. You have to have at least the majority in the House and 60 in the Senate to pass anything. And then you got the judicial who looks at the law and determines what the law means. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing that we need to understand, when we talk about how we get students more civically engaged, look at what's going on right now. Students are disappointed. When I talk to my students in the classroom, the first thing they tell me is the American dream is dead. They can care less about any type of politics because they say we voted for these people, we sent them up there, but they did nothing for us. So my job when I get there is simply this. I'm going to work to restore the American dream for our young people, and that means student loan forgiveness. We got to get rid of all those student loans because predatory lenders have been using students for years. Now, how can I make one loan and then live off the loan my whole life? and the student is struggling to make the payments on the loan. We got to stop the predatory lending, and we got to create programs and internships to help students move forward in life. And I'll do that by talking to them on TikTok, because you got to meet the students where they are.
Many young people feel disconnected from politics and civic life. What do you believe are the biggest barriers to youth civic engagement, and what would you do to address them if elected?
Thanks. What students are telling me right now is the name calling. So they turn on the news. We have a bully in chief, clearly. He's giving permission to all other politicians to fight and name call. And so the students that I talk to right now, and not just students, the under 30s, they say, why should I listen to the news? You guys are all just fighting with each other. Now, none of you in here have heard me do name calling, but they say that to me because they know I'm running for office and they just assume I'm going to do that, right? Wow. So we've got to change that by electing other people. The other thing I've done, not just for this campaign, but previous campaigns, I have currently now 3 interns who are under 25, all of whom want to run for office in the future, and they're learning about campaigning. My campaign manager also wants to run for office, and I've been already to visit the Clemson College Dems and the students at Presbyterian College. Now, I don't want to say the only people out there are the ones in college. We know there's plenty of students who don't go to college. I've also talked at Tri-County Tech. So I'm trying to go where they are. And, oh, wow. Thanks. I didn't think it was that great of a point. But I appreciate it. But sure, we need to be where students are. So, of course, I have an Instagram page. I'd appreciate it if you tell your friends that are under 30 to follow me there, or you follow me there and pass it on. They are on social media, but I'm trying to host. I host a lot of meet and greets. Please invite me to your home and have a few friends, but I'm doing that with young people too. So you guys play video games. I'll talk to you for 5 minutes. I'll show you how bad I am at Call of Duty or whatever you're playing, or board game nights. So I think that maybe if they met politicians that were sort of more human and were in their neighborhoods, I think that could help. Of course, we have to do the things they want, and this is what they're telling me. I got good grades in high school. Then I got into college, and I've worked hard. I'm not going to get a job afterwards, and I'm going to have insurmountable debt. I'm probably not going to be able to afford a home. We got to fix all of that, right? We got to make college more affordable, houses more affordable. More to say on that when I have more time.
The next set of questions is about public safety and rights. What does public safety mean to you, and how would you balance safety with community trust and accountability?
Public safety means you can do what you want to do without being afraid. And I hope all of us in here know that it's more safe in depending on your color, right? I volunteered to be on the police advisory board in Clemson in 2020. Why did I do that? Because I was concerned about what the police were doing in my town. And I knew as a white person, I could speak out to the police who were targeting minorities, right? So safety is different depending on who you are and where you live. The police come more to my neighborhood than they do to the black neighborhood down the street. We got to change government to do that, right? So safety needs to be for everybody. Obviously, so you know what the U.S. is number 1 in? We're not number 1 in education or happiness. We're number 1 in the number of prisons and the number of guns and the number of deaths by guns. South Carolina is usually number 1 on 2 on the number of women killed by men, right? So we need sensible gun control. I'm a total Second Amendment supporter. If you want a gun, great. But I do think you might be required to lock it up. I do think you should register whether you build it yourself with your 3D printer or buy it at a gun show. And there's more sensible gun legislation. Limiting guns is not going to cut out murder, but if you look at the statistics, we have way more murders and, more importantly, suicides. There's a gun in the house, and usually men use guns for suicide. That's pretty lethal, right? So I think gun control legislation could help. I am a Moms Demand Action candidate. If you don't know Moms Demand Action, look it up. I have been the last 3 times, and I follow their advice. And safety is also related to money, right? Which police departments have more, right? Which communities have more to put into public safety? And public safety isn't just policing, of course. It is amenities you have, where you can be safe to play, to eat. So can't answer that in 3 minutes, but I do think we need to invest more in everybody feeling safe no matter where you live.
Read the question one more time so they can hear it, because I think you're going to like this response.
What does public safety mean to you, and how would you balance safety with community trust and accountability?
I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to give you a little short story. Not too long ago, we had COVID. There's a difference between being safe and just doing what you want to. They're talking about, I have the right to. When we asked people to wear masks, it was always my body, my choice. And I never understood that. If you're protecting other people, why not wear the mask? So when we talk about safety, I'm not just talking about safety for white people, because anybody can go into a white community, except for if you're black and you go into a white community, you're probably going to get shot and threw on the ground. But the point is safety for everybody. And I want to make this clear. Somebody says, how can you speak to race and speak to this? I can speak to it because I experienced it. When a police stop me, I got to make sure my hand's on the steering wheel, and he's going to shoot me. I don't have a choice. So this has got to stop. And so how is this going to stop? You're going to have more minorities and people of color in those positions to stand up for all people. See, I don't just look at one race of people. I believe that we were all made in God's image and that we all deserve the same rights that the Constitution promises of us. And so with that being said, what would I do? First of all, we're going to put in policies that say you have a right to do certain things. And yes, I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also recognize sensible gun control laws. We need to have them. Second of all, I've been working in a public school for 28 years. I have never been in a country except for the United States where we tell our kids to hide under the desk because somebody's going to kill us. And so this has got to stop. More people have got to start standing up. And I'm going to be the politician or your congressman to say it's time to put some sensible gun legislation in, even if we have to tack it onto another bill. We got to stop all this stuff where they're passing everything else. Even if it has to be tacked onto the budget, it needs to be tacked on. We got to put it there so that we can make sure to keep not only ourselves safe, but our community safe. So we got to get that kind of legislation passed. And then the other part of the question was, well, how do you, it basically says what was their rights and how do you balance them with the people's rights to do whatever. Let me tell you something. You have a right to do whatever you want until it starts to infringe upon the rights of somebody else.
Thank you. And you kind of got into this next question. As a policymaker, how would you effectively reduce gun violence and prevent needless violence while simultaneously protecting the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens?
First of all, I'm going to tell everybody I'm a gun-toting individual too. I believe in my rights because of what's going on. And so you might get the first or second, but you ain't getting me, I'm going to get you. Second thing you need to understand, I believe in the Second Amendment right as a U.S. Army veteran. But I also believe that we should have laws. Like I agree with Eunice on this part. We need to lock them up. You need to be able to take them away. They should not be on school property. They should not be in churches, period. And they definitely shouldn't be on the bar on Friday night when you're out there getting drunk. All those need to be taken out. So that's what kind of legislation I would pass in that area. And when it comes to gun safety and the Second Amendment, and I'll tell you this, without the Second Amendment, it was put in. You got to know why it was put in. It was put in because just in case we have corrupt governments. And right now, we have a corrupt government. You cannot come to my house and take what's mine after I've worked 43 years to earn it. So we need legislation addressing gun control, gun laws, And we need legislation also, and I'll tell you this, I believe in protecting the Second Amendment. See, those people on the other side keep telling you, well, we got guns over here. Well, you don't think we as Democrats got guns too? Okay?
I think I already answered that question too, but I have to say it's always been annoying to me when I talk to Republicans that they say all Democrats want to take away your guns. I've never met a Democrat that wants to take away the Second Amendment or take away your gun, right? My brother-in-law is a hunter. We have venison. I've had my freezer full of venison, right? I think it's a great way to eat. So I'm not opposed to the Second Amendment, but I certainly do favor gun control, as I mentioned before. I'll just say again, I'm a Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate. They chose me as a candidate, and they have good suggestions. Students Demand Action I've worked with too. We talked about young people before. You remember in Florida how the students got the legislature's attention after the shooting in Florida. So I want to give those folks that know this story the space. I do believe in going to Congress and telling stories from the podium they give us about the people. You know, maybe every time I go up to talk about a bill, I'd say the name of some child that got killed in school. And we need to do something about it, not just after the latest shooting. I think there's a great number of things we can do to increase safety around guns. One of the saddest stories that I've worked with is when a child finds a gun in the home and kills another child or accidentally shoots. One of the things I did when I worked at the hospital was I kept gun locks in my office, and I would give those to people who had guns. The police do that as well. So one of the things that much of that is done at the local and state level, but one thing the federal government has is more of a voice. So I do intend to talk about, here's where you can get a gun law. Keep your children safe. Here's the way you can join whatever, Students Demand Action, if you're worried about that, how you can learn from the folks in Florida, bring it to South Carolina. I do intend to work with, I have been protesting for a lot of my life, certainly a whole lot in the last year. Haven't y'all been to a lot of protests in the last year?
We all been protesting.
But I do intend to be at those as well as your congresswoman and talk to the people and get their stories and then take that to the halls of power as well as use it one-on-one. As you know, it's the gun industry that, again, the billionaires that are keeping legislation out. They're even keeping us from researching gun violence, one of the leading causes of death among young people. So I want us to research that, and I want to tell the other Congress people that they're being duped by billionaires and that that is not why it's not safe here. It's that the billionaires are paying for it.
Thank you so much. Since states now hold the authority to legislate abortion access, how should governments balance the protection of potential human life with a woman's right to bodily privacy and medical autonomy?
Well, of course, we can try to pass federal law allowing the health care of abortion and all other health care. Of course, that's a bit of an obstacle course, right? You know, you got to have 60 votes in the Senate. You got to have the House and a president. So we're not going to get that in the next couple of years. But abortion, or for example, mifepristone, which they're trying to outlaw right here in South Carolina, is used not just for abortion, it's used for women's health care in general. If you've ever had a baby, you've probably gotten that medicine afterwards to stop the bleeding. So I think, again, one way to work with it is I do plan to work with the state legislators and tell them, so I'm from South Carolina, you're hurting people by doing this. Women are dying because of this legislation. One interesting thing about abortion that we've studied, we have the data on, the states that have the highest abortion prohibitions, the abortions go up in that state. The number of abortions go up where you put high prohibitions. So what I do when I talk to legislators like that is I say, so you're opposed to abortion, you know? then I said, you know, one way to get less abortions, well, actually 2 ways. Let's have more contraceptives and have it for free. We used to have that. The agency I worked for was providing that. We got rid of that grant. So let's get that back. It was a federal grant. And you could drop your forbidding abortion legislation. Look at these states. They have more abortions because they did that. The other thing is really interesting about the abortion legislation they're proposing in South Carolina. I'm a healthcare provider, so I might talk to somebody about an abortion. Suppose their husband finds out, they could put me in jail because I talked to their wife. And you know what I do as a therapist? I do whatever the person wants, right? People are always telling me, well, you said this. It's actually not what I said. It's what they said. And I said, yeah, great idea. I support that, right? So they might go home and tell their husband, Eunice said whatever, and that person could get angry, and they could put me in jail, and they could put the woman in jail, and they could put the doctor in jail. How is that helping us? That costs us money. So just the facts, the numbers. The numbers mean more abortions, more costs, more deaths when you have an abortion law. So we got to stop forbidding abortion at the state level, at federal level, all over.
I would take a little bit different approach. Remember, we had something called Roe v. Wade, and all those 4 people that got in on the Supreme Court said, we ain't never touching that law. We ain't gonna never change that law. So, and guess what they did? They changed it. So my approach is gonna be a little bit different. Yeah, I'm gonna work with local governments, the local state and you know, the legislator here to get abortion laws passed, but it's not gonna be good enough. What we need to do is expand the Supreme Court. We need to have at least 13 seats up there so that once we get this law passed, they won't reverse it again. And the second thing I want you, and I'm gonna say it out loud, the second thing I want you to understand is when I look at a woman, I look at her as my equal. It's her body, her choice with her significant other and whoever God she serves. That's the way I look at it. And for me, abortion is not about killing somebody, it's about health care for the woman. What happens when she cannot carry the baby full term? Look at what happened to the 2 girls in Texas. Both of them died in the car because they bled out, because the doctors could not treat them, and they simply said they would relieve the doctors from their duties, and that can no longer happen. And so I'm gonna say this to you. I will work to establish laws for women to get the health care they deserve and the health care they need. I'm not going to intrude upon their rights. That's your right and your family. You know, I love the Republican Party, and I love those guys on the other side because they say, we're pro-life, we're pro-life, we're pro-life. No, what you are is pro-birth. You want them to have the baby, but you're not going to take care of the child. You're not going to help raise the child. You're not going to provide health care for the child. You need somebody like me who's going to fight for somebody who is truly pro-life.
Thank you so much, candidates, for your thoughtful responses this evening. We will now move into the closing statements. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for final remarks.
Okay, I want to let you know I'm Dr. Mackins, candidate for U.S. House District 3. I seriously believe I'm the better candidate. Let me tell you why. My race is against Sherry Biggs. First of all, Sherry Biggs has a doctorate in nursing. I have a doctorate in educational leadership. Sherry Biggs is a U.S. veteran. I am a U.S. veteran. Sherry Biggs has a lifetime and a wealth of information. I have 43 years of not just what we call growth and experience. I have 43 years in different spheres of influence, and I'll call them out for you. I've been a manager. I've been an assistant principal. I'm a local pastor. I have been working in the community for my whole life. I could say I could basically get you from birth and always carry you to the grave, because as a minister, I could bury you. And so with all that being said, the reason that I believe I am the better candidate to beat Sherry Biggs, first of all, I'm not going to sit in the corner and not say nothing. I'm not going to be her like a mouthpiece that Trump allows her to be. Whatever Trump says, she parrots the same old thing. And the second thing that really got me mad and got me passionate about winning this race is the fact that Trump called our local veterans suckers and losers. And I'm a U.S. veteran. I am not a sucker and a loser. And so I can guarantee you that no matter what happens, Dr. Mackins will be speaking up. I won't be sitting in the corner being quiet. I'm going to mack my voice and be heard. I want you to understand, Mac my voice and be heard. Because the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I'm going to say that to you. Go to MackinsForUSHouse.com. Check out my website.
Thank you so much for coming. I know y'all had a lot of other choices. And a choice is important. We, of course, both want to get rid of Sherry Biggs. I'm the candidate that can beat Sherry Biggs in November. Let me tell you why. I've run for office before, and I started working on this campaign a year ago. I've already got over 50 volunteers and over 230 donors, and that is growing all the time. I hope some of you will volunteer and or donate before you leave today. I've talked to a lot of people asking them to run for office, city council, county council, and I have gotten no most of the time. That never stopped me. I was persistent. Jamie Harrison, I, and lots of other people kept calling until we had somebody running for every state house, U.S. house, and so on, all the way down to county council. And I called about 30 people and finally got a yes, right? And she's running a great campaign, and I'm helping her, right? It is my experience as a candidate and my experience in healthcare and in the community that makes me a good candidate. As I said, we're already going door to door, targeting voters that are likely to change. We are already calling voters. I called a voter this morning, and he's a commercial realtor, and he gave me some ideas on affordable housing. I'm taking those ideas from the people I call. When I do those visits, I don't come and tell them what I'm going to do for them. I say, what are your problems with the federal government? They almost always say prices, and if they're a Democrat, they say everything. But we are out there. I'm at events like this hosted by Democratic parties, and I'm grateful for the Anderson Party for hosting it. But I'm also at the community events. I'm in Clemson. There was Touch a Truck. I went there like I did with my little boys when they were little, and I talked to parents. And first of all, we talked about the trucks, and I met the little kids, and they all wanted a different government too, right? So I'm going to places that are not the typical places, as I said, with young people. And we've been doing that for months. We've got events scheduled well past the primary. After I win it, we're still doing meet and greets. So I am the candidate that can beat Sherry Biggs, the one that just says, he said, they will blame it on them, and who's benefiting by this office financially and supporting the president who's making a buck on the office, right? Let's get rid of all of them. Choose in the primaries, not just me, but the candidates that are really out there for all of us. Next to my table, I did bring some information about other candidates as well, because I work on a team, so you can pick up information about other people on your primary ballot. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Great. Thank you again to our candidates, our audience, our event organizers, live streaming teams, and volunteers for making tonight possible. Thank you all for being so nice and courteous. Civic engagement is one of the most important ways we strengthen our communities, and tonight's discussion reflects the value of informed and respectful dialogue. We encourage everyone to stay here and speak with the candidates, stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, exercise your right to vote. Thank you for attending. Have a safe evening.
Thank you so much.